people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Late next month, in Kinshasa, Olympic gold medalist of La France, Estelle Mosley, is going to be returning to action against a familiar face, a familiar fighter, Basheel.
You might be familiar with that name, Basheel. That's the same Basheel that fought Chantal Cameron some years ago. Newly crowned undisputed super lightweight champion Chantal Cameron.
A lot of time has passed since then, and she's set to take on France's Olympic gold medalist, unbeaten Estelle Mosley, who seems quite content to stay on the outskirts of today's lightweight division. She is in possession of the IBO title, sporting a professional record of 10 wins, no losses, and no draws, with 1 knockout. I said it in a previous video. I'll say it again here and now. It almost feels like Estelle is boxing for appearance's sake.
Just for appearance's sake, having debuted as a professional in 2018.
Estelle hasn't exactly, since having debuted as a professional, taken the boxing world by storm in spite of her decorated amateur background.
Like I said, she seems quite content staying on the outskirts, fighting for a full-fledged title, an alphabet title, fighting with that division's undisputed champion, Katie Taylor. That doesn't seem to be a priority to Estelle.
Estelle Mosley, who boxed 2 times the year the pandemic hit, 2 times in 2020, only once, just once last year, and once this year.
The year in between both of those fights.
Next fight's supposed to be going down abroad in Kinshasa. That will be Estelle Mosley's second fight of this year.
Estelle Mosley supposed to be opposite the ring seasoned journeywoman Basheel. I think that punch for punch, Basheel is the stronger puncher if she can connect, if she can land.
As Estelle is not really big on power, she's actually more finesse than ferocity opposite the ring. Basheel, I think Anisha will have the edge in power. Sports professional record of 11 wins, 8 losses with no draws, 10 knockouts, having been knocked out once.
I do think Anisha's a stronger puncher than Estelle, but not a better boxer. Not a better boxer overall. Technique and tactics.
Just being a tactician, that edge would have to go to Estelle, and I don't know what it is Estelle is building towards, you understand. The direction of her career. What is the end game?
What's she building up to?
They're good fights, very good fights to make, anywhere in between 130, 135, and 140 pounds, and as stated, it just feels like Estelle's comfortable boxing every so often, staying on the outskirts. Her career really hasn't taken off in spite of her decorated amateur background.
We know she formed a partnership with the fledgling promotional outfit Pro Bellum not that long ago, and she's actually fought at least once under the banner.
Though I don't get the sense that this upcoming fight with Basheel in Kinshasa is a Pro Bellum promotion. Pro Bellum, which is supposed to be helmed by Richard Schaefer. Pro Bellum that signed a lot of familiar faces and a lot of familiar fighters, but they don't actually have a broadcast partner, thus they don't have broadcast money, network money.
That's the relationship between the promoter and the network. The network essentially gives that promoter a budget to bankroll fights.
As of yet, Pro Bellum has not partnered up with any major network here in the United States or abroad in the United Kingdom. Internationally,
we know they're still around, and we know that they're still finding ways of doing shows and putting on fights. Sonny Edwards' last fight against Felix Alvarado, that was a Pro Bellum show.
But this fight, in this show, I don't get the sense that Pro Bellum is necessarily the promoter putting this show on, given that it's in Kinshasa.
Estelle Mosley's not going to get much exposure if this continues, you know.
For having such a decorated amateur background and being an unbeaten up-and-comer in today's lightweight division, where Katie Taylor still reigns as that division's undisputed champion, Estelle Mosley's flying largely under the radar.
It's really not a high-profile fight.
Should she win? Estelle Mosley, she does have the edge here. She is the better boxer, even if she's not the stronger puncher. Estelle Mosley on points is the logical prediction, the logical way to go.
But you know, if she don't pick up the pace and if something don't change, Estelle Mosley will continue to be on the outskirts of the lightweight division, away from the forefront, where the good fighters are, and the good fights.
You know what? Maybe that's the way she wants it. Her and her handlers, her and her team. Maybe that's the rhyme and the reason for all of this. Estelle will return to action late next month. Keep your eyes peeled for that. In men's super middleweight news, I'm sure most of you have heard by now that Eddie Hearn will attempt to make Canelo versus Ryder in May at the Emirates Stadium. Bit of information that caught me by surprise, because I figured if Canelo is going to end up fighting John Ryder in his next fight as opposed to someone else, it would presumably be to...
Canelo has said in the past that he would like to fight in the United Kingdom in front of those fans and that audience.
So naturally, I assume that's where a potential John Ryder fight would take place, as Canelo is looking to stay busy with a possible May bout. Before pursuing a rematch with WBA light heavyweight champion Sulecki-Bivol in September, I am so pleased for John Ryder. Since he beat Daniel Jacobs, we've been looking for this big fight. Hearn told Matchroom Boxing, we didn't expect it to be Zach Parker. He came through and was just too much for Parker, who I think had an injured hand, but he was getting to him, and I think he would have stopped him anyway.
In the eyes of many, Zach Parker quit. In the eyes of many, Zach Parker was looking for a way out. Even if his hand was injured, there are many fighters that fought injured in order to secure the W.
Both Oscar Valdez of Mexico and Jay Opataya of Australia fought with broken jaws and still secured the W. Naoya Inoue fought with a fractured orbital bone in the first Nonito Donaire fight.
Gervonta Davis in the Isaac Cruz fight hurt his hand. He was injured in that fight in the process of it.
Far be it for me to tell a professional fighter what he or she should do. I'm just telling you where that sentiment comes from and why some people out there feel that Zach Parker copped out, that he quit. It was about 4 rounds into the fight, I believe it was. A strange ending to what I expected to be a firefight. I completely misread the match. It was John Ryder who stayed in character, and Zach Parker.
I grossly underestimated John Ryder, and I grossly overestimated Zach Parker.
I have to address that ahead of the fight. I figured that Zach Parker, he'd be too big, too strong for John Ryder, who has been stopped at least once before some years ago by Nick Blackwell.
I told myself, I don't know that John can stop this guy. And short of a knockout, I don't think that John can win a decision on a Frank Warren show.
Moreover, Zach was the bigger guy, the younger guy, to the eye, the stronger guy. He was the house fighter. I felt he had a lot of things working for him, and in the end, it didn't matter. Boxing being the theater of the unexpected, these things happen, and John proved me wrong. Eddie Hearn states, I've texted Canelo's trainer and manager, Eddie Reynoso, to say, John Ryder is mandatory. Let's go in May at the Emirates. It would be a dream for Ryder, and he deserves it. He is a very good fighter, and he is the mandatory challenger for Canelo Alvarez. This could be our chance to bring Canelo to the UK. It would be unbelievable. We'll see if we can get it over the line.
So Eddie Hearn has managed to get yet another one of his fighters the Canelo Alvarez bag, the Canelo Alvarez sweepstakes. Near as I can tell, it's all the other guys that are on the wrong side of the street.
You heard what the fuck I said. If for the past 4 years Terrence Crawford was on the wrong side of the street because he was with Top Rank, then David Benavidez and Jermall Charlo are on the wrong side of the street because they're with the PBC. Canelo ain't at the PBC, so what the hell are you doing over there?
You're on the wrong side of the street, pal.
Isn't that what Errol Spence Jr. told Terrence Crawford for some years, that because he was with Top Rank, he was on the wrong side of the street? Well, David and Jermall, they're on the wrong side of the street because Canelo ain't at the PBC. He's with Matchroom.
And his next 2 fights seem to involve more Matchroom fighters, John Ryder among them, and reigning WBA light heavyweight champion Sulecki-Bivol, who still seems to be a Matchroom fighter until further notice, unless something changes.
The sequence of events, sequence of news stories, in their chronological sequence. The announcement of Caleb Plant versus David Benavidez early next year came some weeks before the outcome of this fight between John Ryder and Zach Parker, and some weeks before the proposed Canelo versus Ryder showdown.
Yeah, they already announced that David Benavidez was going to be fighting former IBF champion Caleb Plant before the outcome of this fight took place.
If you're starting to feel like David Benavidez isn't much of a priority to Canelo Alvarez, well, put simply, it's because he's not.
Oh, I know that David Benavidez was basically spoken for before the outcome of this fight was decided, but
there will be a rather vocal contingent, a small one, albeit vocal contingent of fight fans who would prefer to see Canelo fight David as opposed to John.
But this ain't really a lot of people. You know, it's not a lot of fight fans that are getting behind that, because if it were a lot of fight fans, then David would be a bigger name in this country, and he's not a bigger name. He's nothing.
He's a nobody.
Is he supposed to be special because Mike Tyson dubbed him the quote-unquote Mexican monster?
Because he had him on his podcast? Hey, he had Jermall Charlo on his podcast, and Jermall Charlo ain't no household name, and neither is David.
Those are just two more nobodies brought to you by the PBC.
What they are. Whether Canelo fights David or he fights John, it's inconsequential to me. Those kind of fighters are interchangeable.
You say that David's Canelo's mandatory challenger? Well, so is John Ryder.
They both are, but Canelo's not currently under orders to fight either one.
You say that you'd prefer to see Canelo take on David.
I don't give a fuck what you prefer.
I don't give a fuck what you want. No one does. I mean, that's why David's not a household name to begin with, because there just ain't enough people behind him.
Well, why aren't there more people behind him?
Well, he's been at super middleweight for a very long time through two separate cycles of champions, and he has yet to really fight a notoriable fighter in a notoriable fight.
He's just not getting around to fighting Caleb Plant, for God's sakes.
This year, he only fought once this year against an over-the-hill and shot David Lemieux, who we all knew serviced as little more than cannon fodder for David Benavidez, and that's it. That's all he did.
Well, guys like John Ryder are fighting the likes of Danny Jacobs and Callum Smith, more recently unbeaten Zach Parker, on a Queensbury promotion show.
David Benavidez is still playing it safe, and the boxing community at large can't fake an interest. They're not interested.
You say that Canelo versus Benavidez would be a big fight, but Canelo versus anybody is a big fight. That's because of Canelo, not because of David.
He ain't special. That's the bottom line. If you don't want to understand that, hey, you don't have to.
Fuck off.
The world don't care about you anyway.
Fuck off. You're not gonna blow smoke up my ass about this guy.
If Canelo gets around to fighting him, then great. But if he doesn't, he doesn't. It's inconsequential. It's not like the guy beat anybody good anyway. He hasn't.
Canelo's two-fight plan seems to consist of John Ryder, then a showdown with Sulecki-Bivol.
No PBC fighters this year. Not a single one. So they better find something to do.
Don't let Caleb Plant be your only fight next year.
Why not?
You want to fight me? I'll fight you. Come on.
Oh.
Which way?
You want to fight me? I'll fight you.
Which way?
68.
You still haven't fought David Benavidez at 168, but you're going to fight a light heavyweight at 168.
68? Yeah, it could be. For belts. But you know, my goal, to be honest, fighting for belts.
Undisputed, right now.
Undisputed? You're not undisputed champion at 168 pounds. Hell, you're not undisputed at 160. You're not even unified. Is this guy drunk?
You want to fight me?
You understand?
Man, we have to ask Canelo to vacate those titles first. As soon as he vacates, that would be a great fight.
I said WBC. WBC?
What, now you want Sulecki-Bivol, who campaigns as a light heavyweight, to drop down 2 weight classes to fight you for your one belt when he already has one of his own?
160?
160.
No.
168? You got WBC 168?
168, I have to think, yeah.
168, come on.
Why not?
Come on, 168. I do it.
Do you have a belt for 168?
I do it. 168. I
When
do
you-
it.
when you do
no
it,
belt.
let's-
No belt. No belt.
Wasn't it this same Jermall Charlo who said he wasn't going to go up to super middleweight to fight David Benavidez because David doesn't have a belt?
But you're going to fight Dimitri for no belt.
Just attraction. I do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, I can do it too.
I do it. You want to fight me?
Yeah, why not?
All right, come on.
Best fighting the best. That's what it's all about.
I do it. I do it. Come on.
It's done.
You saw Bivol call me out. Yeah, I saw that. I didn't know. Shit.
You can't make it up. You really can't. Here you have Jermall Charlo on camera, advocating for a Bivol fight, campaigning for it, proposing that Dimitri drop down 1 weight class, 2 weight classes to take him on for either his WBC title at middleweight or no belt at all at super middleweight so he can turn around and tell Fight Hub that it was Dimitri calling him out.
You know, before this past weekend's fight where they met up, I don't think Sulecki-Bivol knew who this man was.
And that he's proposing that Dimitri drop down in weight to fight him, to either middleweight or super middleweight. Hey, you're a big boy, why don't you just move up in weight? What are you afraid of? If Canelo, who's a lot shorter than the both of these guys, shorter than Dimitri, shorter than Jermall Charlo, if he could have already fought as a light heavyweight 2 times, 2 more times than you have, what's stopping you? You haven't even fought all this year.
I have it on good authority that Jermall Charlo's fight with Sulecki, who he was supposed to fight earlier this year but pulled out due to a reported back injury. I have it on good authority that fight has been rescheduled for February of next year.
I never bought into Jermall Charlo's alleged back injury because right around that time he was seen in the club, inebriated alongside some local rappers, musicians, or whoever those people were. I never actually believed that Jermall was injured. In any event, the fight didn't happen this year.
And now inside intel indicates the fight may go down in February of next year.
If he ends up fighting Sulecki, really, if he ends up fighting anyone other than the WBC's interim champion of the Dominican Republic, Carlos Adames, that is an affront to their own rank standings. They're essentially enabling this guy to play it safe and hold the green belt hostage. This is a big part of the reason today's middleweight division has stagnated. A historically glamorous division, many glamorous fights, big fights historically, all but
It's a wasteland now.
You got this guy running around drunk out of his mind pretending that he'd actually fight Sulecki-Bivol when he's been avoiding a fight with his own PBC stablemate for years now, David Benavidez, and he's not even a light heavyweight. He's up there at super middle. You won't fight him, but we're supposed to believe you'd fight Dimitri.
Jermall Charlo is one of those fighters that is only really popular in some circles, very small ones. The fascination amongst some Americans with big talkers, big talk.
The fascination with big talkers that aren't necessarily big doers. He certainly isn't having the career that his twin brother is having. Jermall Charlo, the junior middleweight division's undisputed champion. Jermall, he ain't that kind of fighter.
And this ain't that kind of career.
And you know why he did this? He did this because in all likelihood he knew he's got a fight coming up and he needs to get people talking about him. He needs to get people talking about something. A fight that in all likelihood won't happen, but at least he's tacked his name onto it. A Sulecki-Bivol fight.
You'd have to be pretty fucking stupid to take this guy at his word.
For some years now, the PBC's stake in the middleweight division has been thinning out over the years. They don't have all that many prize stallions in that middleweight show. It really is just Jermall and Carlos Adames, and I don't get the sense he's going to fight Carlos next.
By all rights, he should be stripped. He should be labeled a champion in recess and stripped of the WBC title. But like I said, the WBC's enabling him to hold it hostage.
And that anybody could still be a fan of this guy.
Like I said, some Americans have a fascination with big talkers that are not necessarily big doers. Jermall Charlo, he fits that bill.
He's that guy.